Now to the killing of another Black American at the hands of authorities, this time in Columbus, Ohio. 23-year-old Casey Goodson Jr. was shot by a sheriff's deputy near his own front door of his home on Friday. His family says that he had only gone out for sandwiches, but officials say Goodson refused an order to drop a gun. Now the Justice Department is getting involved. Jeff Pegues reports.
My grandson just got shot.
On a call with 911, Casey Goodson's grandmother says her grandson has been shot as he entered their home.
I just heard the gunshots and I would get up and he's laying in the door.
The family says Goodson had just arrived home with sandwiches. Just moments before the shooting, Goodson was spotted by a sheriff's deputy who was working as part of a U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force conducting a search for a suspect in the neighborhood. Goodson was not the target of the manhunt. Authorities say Goodson was seen waving a gun as he drove by.
The deputy, at some point after that, he confronted him, and it went badly.
Police claim Goodson then got out of his vehicle and was ordered to drop his gun. And when he failed to comply, the deputy opened fire. Law enforcement has stated at least one person heard that verbal command, and they say a gun was found at the scene. But Goodson family attorney Sean Walton disputes that chain of events, saying no one from Goodson's family heard any confrontation and that the 23-year-old was killed in front of them, including several children.
Casey was executed while walking into his own home. And that's something that, curiously, was left out of the initial statement.
Goodson's family say that they did not see a gun on Casey. They also say he had no criminal record and was a legal gun owner and concealed carry permit holder.
The question that needs to be answered immediately is why was Casey shot? For having a gun when he had every legal right to do so.
In an interview with CNN, Goodson's mother says she feels race played a part in her son's death.
Because of the color of our black man's skin, they're not protected. They become targets instead of somebody that they have to protect.
Earlier, we spoke to Jeff about the investigation and the deputy that was involved in the deadly shooting.
Get the sense that most departments across the country now have body cameras. That's just not the case. Some departments have resisted getting body cameras. Some departments say they don't have the budget for body cameras, and in this case, they don't have body cameras, and so that's a critical piece of potential evidence that investigators won't have in this case. You know, in so many cases that we've seen over the years, including the George Floyd case, you have these body cameras and cell phone cameras playing such a prominent role in the investigations, but in this case, we don't have that. You can see that this is a veteran police officer or sheriff's deputy, 17 years on the force. He's been identified as Jason Meade, but there are some real questions right now about what happened in this particular incident.
So the shooting did not involve a Columbus police officer. So why is the Columbus Police Critical Incident Response Team the primary agency investigating this shooting? And how's the family attorney responding to the investigation?
Well, the incident actually happened in Columbus. It was a sheriff's deputy with Franklin County, but it wasn't Columbus PD. But because it happened in that jurisdiction, the Columbus Police Department will be investigating. The family, the Goodson family attorney, has said, you know, this is not something that they're comfortable with. They want what they are calling a transparent investigation. And they believe that the failure to do so to this point has really impacted this investigation. You now know that the Department of Justice is looking into this case as well, and that is something that the family obviously welcomes as the DOJ tries to determine if Casey Goodson's civil rights were violated. But there is, you know, surprisingly relatively little evidence in this case, and it's going to be hard to determine. And I say relatively little evidence because you just don't know what kind of evidence there was at the original scene because of how this original investigation was handled. And so, you know, investigators with DOJ and anybody else who looks into this case is really starting from behind in terms of being able to get their hands on the evidence.
As you mentioned, the Columbus Police Department tried to turn the case over to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the state agency that usually looks into police shootings, but the BCI denied the request. Why?
Well, they, as I alluded to earlier, they said that there's been too much time that has passed in this investigation. They weren't notified until 2 or 3 days later, and they just felt that they could not conduct a thorough investigation, having been notified that far after this shooting. I guess what they're suggesting is that if they were called in earlier to investigate this case, then they would have been in a better position to accept the case. But in this incident, for some reason, it took several days before they were called in to investigate this shooting.
Well, something tells me there are going to be a lot of questions moving forward, and possibly questions that we'll never get, the right answers to. Jeff, though, thanks so much for bringing us up to speed.
My pleasure.